Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'll be reviewing the film Escape from New York. Now, this continues my series of reviews that I started at the Rough Cuts, and now I'm bringing over to my own channel where I review every film that John Carpenter ever directed. Manhattan Island has been turned into a prison, a giant prison. It's sealed from New Jersey through, the Brooklyn shoreline up. The island of Manhattan is a prison. This started in about 1988 when the crime rate rose at about 400% in an alternate timeline. Now, the time this film takes place, in 1997, or alternate timeline 1997, the president's plane Air Force One has been hijacked by evil terrorists while he's on the way to a summit. It is kidnapped and it crash lands in the city of New York. Or in the prison of New York, I guess. They need to get him out. And they can't have their guys come in because they say he will be killed. So they need someone else to go in. Fortunately enough, Snake Plissken, who is going to go into this prison of New York anyway, when he gets the offer that he needs to go save the president and bring him back within 24 hours so he can reach this summit. If Snake does this, he will not be put into prison. However, they also put tablets in his neck that will explode and basically kill him, rupturing several of his major arteries, and so he will die also. So he basically has to get the president with it back from New York in 24 hours. Less than 24, it's like 22 really. And so he goes in to try and find the president, played by Donald Pleasence. Now, Kurt Russell, who's Snake Plissken, does a really great job. I think this film has a lot of tough testosterone moments, but it's also really kind of self-aware. There's a certain amount of irony in Kurt Russell's performance, as well as this toughness, this tough guy attitude. Sometimes I feel like he's putting on a character, but like he knows it, but he's also so fucking cool. I think he is purposely being a little cheesy. Kurt Russell was considered kind of John Carpenter's muse, and you can tell they really jived well together. Avco Embassy Pictures actually preferred Charles Bronson or Tommy Lee Jones as Snake Plissken. They didn't want Kurt Russell. He was more well known at that time for doing Disney lightweight films. He was actually in an Elvis movie that took place at the World's Fair, and then he worked with John Carpenter on a TV movie before this, an Elvis TV movie where he played Elvis, but this was their first feature film together. John Carpenter was inspired by Death Wish to make this movie, because Death Wish made New York look like kind of this urban jungle of chaos. And what John Carpenter says he did is he took that idea and made it more science fiction. He introduced a big science fiction element. I feel like there's a little satire. Carpenter wrote this actually after the Watergate scandal in the mid-70s, and he had wanted to make this before Halloween and The Fog and all that, but no one would ever let him direct it. So after he had success with Halloween and The Fog, he was signed to this deal and he made Escape from New York. He was actually offered the Philadelphia Experiment, but it wasn't ready, and he had always really wanted to make this movie. It is a very straight action picture for a film that's so infused with sci-fi and satire and kind of this pessimistic tone. It has all these extra elements to it, but it's mainly just a simple escape movie. He has to go into New York, get the president, and come out. It's very escape movie genre, but it's very good, especially with John Carpenter's score in this. I mean, he knows when to slow it down, get you to calm down, kind of instructing you almost with the music. And then when it's tense, you hear that fast-moving drum machine as Isaac Hayes' Duke of New York comes in and stuff. He's really good at setting the mood, setting the ambiance. This film is very kind of moody. I love the cinematography by Dean Cuddy. He also shot The Fog in Halloween 2 and Halloween 3, and I thought he did an amazing job. Some of the framing in this, they have some amazing long shots that work really well. He had both the producers he's worked best with, Deborah Hill, who I think he worked incredibly well with Deborah Hill, and then Larry J. Franco, who he also worked on with They Live. I think he had a really good support system. He had an amazing cast. He had some of like his regulars. He kind of had like a stable of actors like Howard Hawks would have or John Ford would have. And he reminds me almost of Bogdanovich or like Tarantino, and someone who's really trying to emulate these directors he's so inspired by. But, obviously, if you know John Carpenter, his major influence is Howard Hawks. And he has, Carpenter regulars at this point, which even you could say Kurt Russell was one, Donald Pleasence, Adrienne Barbeau, Tom Atkins, Jamie Lee Curtis had a bit part as a computer voice and kind of the narrator. But he also has an incredible cast of new people he hasn't worked with before, like Lee Von Cleef from spaghetti westerns to Escape from New York, playing against Kurt Russell as Snake Plissken and doing an amazing job. I mean, he is so good as like the adversary to Snake Plissken, the guy who's like instructing him. You have Ernest Borgnine, who recently passed away as Cabby. He has kind of an elastic face in this. Sometimes like he could do these sudden facial movements with his eyes that just look incredible. You have Isaac Hayes as the Duke of New York. Isaac Hayes has some real presence. He comes on, you know, you can tell who the Duke of New York is. I mean, even you can tell who he is so much so that when he drives up in his car, he's not in the back seat. One of his henchmen are, and he's in the front seat. And you could actually think, and it's not a race issue or anything, it's just like the fact of where they're all sitting. You could not think Isaac Hayes is the Duke of New York initially when that starts out, but he has such a presence that you're like, no, that's the fucking Duke of New York. I love Harry Dean Stanton as Brain, or Harold. I really like the entire cast. You know, it's such a strong cast to this action picture. And apparently Carpenter had it just a solid action picture. He brought in a screenwriter with him, Nick Castle, who he went to USC with. He brought the Cabby character that Ernest Borgnine played, and he brought more of a New York sensibility to it. Because not a lot of this was even filmed in New York. It was actually shot in East St. Louis, Illinois, and it was kind of all bombed out and everything, and they made it look like New York. They did kind of some scenery in New York. They actually shot on Liberty Island at night, which is really rare. And I always think of this movie really as a New York movie, but most of it is in Missouri and in California. John Carpenter is mainly known as a horror director, but I think this film shows, as well as Assault on Precinct 13 does, is that he was a pretty incredible action director. I'm surprised he hasn't made more action films, and I wish he had. It plays with you in certain elements, like there's a part where he's talking to this girl who he meets, but he's hiding from the crazies who live under the ground, and they make out, and it looks like they'll be together the whole movie, and she falls into the ground, and all these people like attack her, and that's it for her. This is kind of an action movie that, by someone who's seen a lot of 70s action movies, it's very postmodern. That's kind of John Carpenter's very postmodern director. He's acknowledging all the classic Hollywood directors that came before him, and he really loves all those directors. I don't think this film would be as good if there wasn't such a love of movies in it and had such a really amazing supporting cast and such a nice kind of moody tone. It makes you appreciate genre and appreciate how someone can twist just a simple kind of genre piece and add a lot of cool elements to it. And this is really the time of taking B movie ideas and shooting them like an A director like Spielberg did, and Carpenter did that as well. And I think this is one of the finest examples he has of his own style, even though it kind of breaks away from his normal style because it's not necessarily horror, you know. It's very dark. Most of the movies at night, and John Carpenter actually spent almost 3 months mainly at night because they shot at night, and he'd go to sleep right when the sun came up and wake up right when the sun came down. You know, and I can feel like that element on set that like they just didn't really see sunlight and everything was bleak and dark, and like Snake didn't know if he was going to live. He's just fighting his way through New York, really. Alright, so if you have seen Escape from New York and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments, and subscribe if you would like to. I kind of thought it was fun to do kind of rough cut videos, so I just thought I'd just do them on my own channel. So I'm going to continue this John Carpenter series on my own channel. I'll probably finish it sometime this year. So that's pretty much what I'm going to do. I'll probably do 2 of these a month from now on. So, yeah.